Welcome to the WriterDojo with your host, Steve Diamond.
That's me.
And Larry Correia.
It appears my hypocrisy knows no bounds.
Today's episode, Message Fiction.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the WriterDojo. Glad to have you all back with us. Now, before we get into the message of what this episode is about, there's a couple things we want to talk about. One, first caveat. Larry and I just ate probably more meat than is healthy for any one individual to eat.
This episode is brought to you by Tucano's Brazilian Barbecue.
Yeah, we ate all the food.
Dude, I ate the human body is not supposed to be able to digest that many pounds of steak.
No, but we'll try anyway.
If I die partway through this recording session, just remember me, guys.
Yeah. Part two, second caveat. Okay, this is being done with new equipment that we bought specifically with funds generously donated to us by supporters. And so these are brand new mics, stands, the recording interface, all the different things.
Yeah, to specify, we're not in the studio. We're not in Craig's studio today. We're actually in Steve's basement.
Yeah.
Because this is the setup that we are going to, if this works, we're going to be able to take this on the road.
Yeah.
And take it to cons and interview other writers. And because the last time we did that, it was fun. We got some great interviews, but the sound quality was not good.
Yeah, the mics and everything that we were using on there, they were just lent to us by the folks over at FenCon, who were super great, helping us get all that stuff in last second. So that was fine. But since we have some money, we bought all of this nice equipment, these nice microphones. If you've been listening to me on any of the Chris Rocchio Kickstarter videos that I've been on, or any of the other podcasts that I've been interviewed on lately, I'm basically using the same sort of mic that I was using on those.
Yeah,
and I thought I sounded pretty clear.
Yeah, so let us know, guys, what you think in the comments.
Yeah. Now, this room isn't a dead room, unlike Craig's studio, so there's a chance you're going to get a little bit of background noise here and there.
Or your other kids.
Yeah, my other kids and their crazy friends.
And special thanks to Diamond 1.1, who is here being our recording engineer.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about him on the episode after this one, because he helped us with what we're going to talk about on that one, kind of some more lessons from the gun range. But this episode, this topic came up in the Facebook group just like 2 days ago, and it was the person, and for the life of me, I can't remember who brought it up, but the person said they'd seen a new topic or a new genre, and what they called it was eco-fiction, which sounds a lot like eco-terrorism to me, but I guess the whole point of it is that it's the idea was that this is message fiction, where you have a specific political or ecological or economic whatever message, and you want to implement it in your fiction.
Well, at least my comment on that is at least they're open about it.
Right.
And some people are into that. And if you're going to advertise it, that's great. I've come up a lot on message fiction, and people always say that I'm like anti-message fiction or I hate message fiction, and then they try to say, "Oh, you're such a hypocrite because there's messages in your book." No, I'm going to clarify exactly my feelings on that subject today.
I think that there's a big difference between your characters having philosophies or religions or whatever that they believe in, that they espouse within your fiction, versus you as the author trying to put your personal views into a piece of fiction and shoving it down the reader's throats.
Yeah, no, when you say message fiction, this could mean different things to different people, but historically how my name gets conflated with this is because I was the anti-message fiction guy, and that for a period there, starting about 15, 20 years ago in science fiction and fantasy publishing, there was a massive push to have
Dying polar bear fiction.
Yeah, we called it dying polar bear fiction, where everything was about, at the time, was global warming. And then after it was global warming, it was George Bush is bad, and every villain in every book was a thinly veiled George Bush and Dick Cheney. And
They've
so
been definitely supplanted now.
yeah, so on. I mean, we had the Trump years, but basically, the message fiction. The thing to keep in mind here, guys, is that the majority of traditional publishing at the time was out of Manhattan. Like the vast, overwhelming majority was out of Manhattan. And if you've ever been to Manhattan, politically it skews one way really hard. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the publishing world, it skews that way so overwhelmingly that the Venn diagram of Manhattan publisher and Democrat is basically a stack of pancakes, right?
Right.
I mean,
And not the delicious cake.
and I'm not going to get political this episode. I'm just saying it was a monoculture. Where everybody believed the same things. And if you didn't believe the same things, you better shut up.
Yeah, well, I mean, you and I have both heard agents and editors and publishers and stuff literally say, if you're of a certain political persuasion, you're not going to get published with me.
Yeah, keep your heads down, guys,
Yeah.
if you're going that route. Now, this was pre-indie. This was pre me causing a big hoop-de-law about this, which we were not going to get into. But the thing about the message fiction, guys, is message fiction in and of itself is not inherently bad. So when I came along and I started talking about, like, you know, the dying polar bears and robot rape, that was the other one. Like, if you had a robot, it had to get raped.
Yeah, that was
Pretty
and I
friggin'
know
annoying.
exactly which book we're talking about. Too.
Oh yeah, and it was just shot. And the thing is, and all the awards would go to whatever fit the proper message.
I'm pretty sure it did win all the
It
awards.
did. And so the thing is, guys, what had happened wasn't necessarily that message fiction is a bad thing. It's that message fiction is a thing, but it can't be the only thing.
Right.
Books are an entertainment product. Novels are an entertainment product. Our job is to entertain people. And so when I started this, people said, well, there's always been messages in science fiction and fantasy. Yes, there has. However, they were also an entertainment product first, message product second, or third, or fourth, or fifth. And we had changed it until that message was the only thing that mattered. And we got to the point where quality didn't matter, entertainment didn't matter, sales didn't matter.
Which is staggering to me.
It's completely asinine because it was all about certain people in the publishing industry being able to virtue signal at their tea parties, you know, at their Manhattan tea parties or whatever, that I have this and we wrote this and it's so important and we sold 16 copies nationwide.
Yeah.
And, you know, that kind of thing. And so that was what I was fighting back against. I don't believe that message fiction by itself is inherently wrong or bad. But I want to paraphrase Jim Butcher because I can't remember the actual quote, but I heard a Jim Butcher quote on this. And Jim is a very wise man. And somebody asked Jim about message fiction. And his comment was, never preach harder than you entertain.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's probably the best attitude you can possibly take in this sort of scenario. When people say that there's always been politics or messages in fiction, they're right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a story. I mean, all the way back to, you know, what is widely considered one of the first science fiction novels ever, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. You know, there is messaging, there is politicalness in all of these books.
Well, like the original Star Trek, tons and tons and tons of stuff. But here's the thing: did that show have an entertaining thing where the message about racism was just part of the episode that drugged you along and entertained you, and then there's the moral of the story?
Well, it's like the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
I love Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
We both love this show.
Yeah. Well, early seasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a moment though, and again, and Terry Crews is hysterical.
Terry Crews can do no wrong.
But there's the episode where it's this is our episode about racism, and it felt like the what was it, the Saturday afternoon special or whatever it was about racism and how, you know, he was in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time and all this stuff. If that is a legitimate point you want to bring across, then bring that point across within the confines and context of a story in a way that feels natural and organic.
Yeah.
Not to where it feels like there's like the record screech, and
Yeah.
then it's like, now the next 5 minutes of this show are brought to you by message fiction.
Do you remember when we were young and TV was a little more blatant about this? It would be a very special episode.
Yeah.
A very special episode of Blossom or whatever. Pick the show. And then it'd have an episode about illiteracy or bulimia or whatever.
Oh yeah, like
it was.
Saved by the Bell had it with pill addiction.
Yeah.
But it was oh gosh, what was it? I think it was like caffeine pills in the episode, but she was addicted to them because they helped her study, Larry.
Wow, she probably went on to be a writer.
She went on to be something.
Oh, was that the character went on to do all that crazy stripper movie?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was so bad.
Yeah.
Your son's in the room. I won't talk about the movie. This is very bad, guys. Don't watch it. Like, it's bad. Okay, so I mean, the thing about message fiction is it's going to be in there. Like, if you're writing about adult topics and adult themes, and you're writing about the world, and you got a statement to make, that's great. Put it in there. Put it in there. But have it be organic to what you're trying to do. You can write a science fiction novel that's straight up about racism or sexism or whatever, but you still got to have a story there.
Well, I mean, classism, right? Like,
oh, geez, I read
like,
Son of the Black
I was going to
Sword.
say, Son of the Black Sword is very obviously about classism is a major component within it.
Huge.
But it's not because you're like, well, today, gentle readers, I want to talk about a very special episode of Son of the Black Sword, classism. It's part of a culture.
Yeah, so as an organic part of the series.
Correct.
And the thing is, I mean, I get into all that. And I've had people who don't understand my philosophy of like when I started railing against all this political bias and nonsense, try to say that, oh, he's such a hypocrite because there's messages in his books. Guys, there's messages in almost all books.
It's well, I'd argue that if your character is well written, well rounded, and complete, that character is going to have very strong feelings towards very specific topics. Okay, so for example, writing Werewolf Cop. Okay, the main character is a black dude who's a cop, who also happens to be a bloodthirsty werewolf because that's funner. So he has very specific views on things that may or may not match with what other things you're seeing, but they're his views because of the product of how he was when he grew up. Same thing with I'm co-writing this book with Mike Rothman, these techno thrillers, and it's about a girl who kind of becomes a Repairman Jack-esque problem solver. She's Chinese, and she was part of like sex slavery for a while. She has very, very, very specific views on Chinese culture, on human trafficking, on U.S. and world politics, because that's the character that she is. And if I don't espouse those, if I don't clearly show what those are in organic terms, again, then I'm not being honest to the character.
Yeah. There's this element of truthfulness and honesty when you write a book. And if you got, especially if it's based in the real world and you're building your characters based upon real life people and how people and cultures really are, you're going to have elements of that stuff. Just keep in mind, what is the person picking up the book after? Mm-hmm. Like clearly, if you pick up a Tom Clancy novel, it's going to have political commentary.
If it doesn't, people are going to put down your Tom Clancy book.
Because that's what it's all about.
I mean, what it comes down to is, and I like the word that you use, Larry, and that's the honesty of it. If the character is honestly talking about the beliefs that they have, and it's natural to the story, often, something that makes them angry and they're put into a situation where old memories are dredged up or old fears or old hatreds even are brought up, then that feels natural and it feels organic to the story. But if you have to pause in order to say, by the way, these are the political beliefs of Joe Schmo, the werewolf cop, then it does a few things. One, the automatic preachiness of it is, to use the Jim Butcher quote, is outweighing your ability to entertain.
I've seen books, modern books, where it's like I'm reading along in the narrative and then they'll just stop to have like a rant about something completely unrelated to the plot and it's completely inorganic. But it's like the main character stops and they have to talk about fracking and how they feel about, carbon footprints. And it's out of the middle of frickin' nowhere and there's like 6 paragraphs. That's ham-fisted. That's the very special episode of Blossom,
Yeah.
And nobody likes that.
They really don't.
Even people on that side don't actually like it.
Oh, I think
judging by the sales.
I think a perfect example of this for me is actually Michael Crichton's State of Fear.
Oh, because that's about what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, it's super in your face, right? It's basically the right-leaning railing against the idea of global warming and how, the shifting goalposts of it, right? I remember reading that book, audio listen to that book. And at the end of it, I'm like, it's not that I disagree. It's that meant more to the story than the events the characters were going through. I want the adventure, like Jurassic Park, right? Jurassic Park there is a message in there, and that's, science can outstrip, morality and things of that nature.
They
right?
asked if they could. They didn't ask me.
If
I can't do a Jeff Goldblum. So
they were so concerned with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think about if they should. And
Steve opened his shirt while he said that too.
I did.
Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
It was very Jeff Goldblum. And that's an interesting message. But that whole book is about running from dinosaurs that want to eat you. Okay. The adventure of that book is in the driver's seat the whole time. Whereas in State of Fear, it's the flip, right? The characters aren't even in the passenger seat. They're kind of in the back seat while everything else is driven forward. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about different ways where you can implement messaging into your fiction to make it feel organic. So we'll be right back.
Hello, word mercenaries. I'm Thomas Umstattd Jr., host of the Novel Marketing Podcast, here to bring you Book Marketing Commandment number 8. Thou shalt surround thyself with savvy authors. Why were C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien able to redefine the fantasy genre? By first forming a writers group called the Inklings. So why is it so hard for us to make author friends? I think it's for several reasons. The first is pride. We don't want to appear like failures. The second is envy. We resent the success of other authors. And the third is artifice. We embellish our online persona. All three of these things are worse when we're online. Face it, we're not our best selves on social media. If all your author friends are avatars on Facebook, you're in trouble. My advice is to meet offline as much as possible. Use social media to supplement, not as the main course. The more you surround yourself with savvy authors, the more successful you will be. To learn more about how to form real connections with other authors, check out my website, novelmarketing.com, or subscribe to my podcast, Novel Marketing, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, so I want to ask you a question, Larry. We were before the break. We were kind of talking about messaging and how there's a lot of people on every side of the political discussion who seem to think that if you include anything in there, all of a sudden it's message fiction.
Well, people are hypersensitive to it right now because we spent the last decade beating people over the head with just a golf club of nonsense, right? It was so pervasive and so annoying that the buying public has become hypersensitive to it. And so if there's even a hint of something in your fiction that is that stuff, immediately a large portion of the country is just going to get turned off because they've just been so picked on for so long and called names by their entertainment products for so long that even if you don't mean to, It's actually kind of funny to me because for the mandatory diversity we've talked about on this show
we talked
before.
about mandatory diversity.
Those people who are trying to shove like their checklists into everything are actually going backwards because what they're causing is society to have an unconscious backlash against this stuff. Example I was going to use is a friend of mine wrote a science fiction novel. I don't want to name any names, but he wrote a science fiction novel. One of the main characters was a lesbian. And immediately he started getting trashed. Like, this is woke. This is woke. Look at this crap. And no, I read the book. I'm actually one of the cover blurbs on the book. It was organic. And really what it came down to is like she was terrible at relationships with human beings and she was really married to her ship as a spaceship captain. But it was just interesting to me because the market is so hypersensitive. Because remember like Buzz Lightyear? Yeah. They had a Buzz Lightyear movie, and everybody's like, well, there's gay representation, and everybody like lost their crap. And my wife watched it. She says the movie was boring as stupid, but that part was like, nah, whatever. And it's interesting, though, is just that the market has gotten so saturated and so annoyed by the mandatory checklist nonsense, nonstop bossy preachiness, that they're scared. The market is skittish. The buying public just is sick of this crap.
Well, and I think this goes back to, and we've talked about this a lot in previous episodes, and it's the idea of checklisting. You just brought it up, right? When you are using a checklist, and for a lot of these things, it's very real. It's, okay, well, you need to include this group. You need to include this topic. You need to include this political discussion. If you as the writer can't organically put that stuff into your book, then the reader is going to see all of it. And your checklist is going to, that checklist is going to feel like a checklist book.
Yeah, it's going to feel tacked on.
Procedural, mandatory.
It's like your mandatory reading assignment in school, which the biggest single reason Americans don't read anymore is school sucked all the fun out of it through stuff like that. Guys, if you want to have anything in your books, you can, as long as it's good, as long as the reader likes it. And not all readers are going to like everything. And that's fine.
And I think that's worth mentioning too, is no matter what you do, you're always going to have people that don't like what you write.
Yeah, I've had like the least messagey things I've ever written. People are like, oh, there's guns in it. It's all right-wing. Well, here's the thing. I'm writing about professional monster hunters. You're not going to have a lot of squishy bleeding hearts in that line of work. You know what I mean?
No.
You have to be a weapons expert or die.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, guys. I'm not going to have a lot of squishy pro-gun control people in my book about professional monster killers.
Well, or it's like watching the show Bosch.
Oh, yeah, great show.
And seeing...
And there was a couple bits where it flirted with that.
Oh, especially the final season.
Oh, yeah, with Hector.
Yeah,
because it was all ACAB.
That was...
F the police.
Yeah, that was dumb. There's obviously some weird reshoots that had to have happened.
Oh, yeah. Everybody who's a writer watched that sequence, and like they clearly cut some stuff out because what actually happened didn't make a lick of sense.
Well, what actually happened was police procedure. De-escalate and take down the person.
I guarantee there's a little cut where Hector put the boot to that guy.
Yeah.
I guarantee.
For sure.
Yeah.
But for the most part, within that
J.
show...
Edgar. I'm sorry.
Jamie Hector's the actor.
Jamie Hector's the actor.
Yeah.
J. Edgar's the character.
Phenomenal character, phenomenal actor.
Great actor.
So throughout the course of the entire show, you see this interesting dichotomy that the main character Harry Bosch goes through, right? That he this belief system that he has. One, he is a cop. He's a homicide detective. And his idea of everybody counts or nobody counts. It's he will work his butt off no matter what. That's great. And that is what law enforcement is all about. But on the flip side, you also see, which is the very noir detective trope, and that's the idea that the system is flawed and he doesn't know what to do about it. He keeps trying to do the everybody counts or nobody counts bit throughout the whole series to make sense of this world that he's in, while at the same time being a victim of the same world that he's trying to improve.
He's a product of it.
Yeah. And you see it very, especially in later, in the newest kind of spin-off season, which you haven't seen yet, so I won't talk.
Full disclosure, my daughter was on a LDS mission, and I watched Bosch with her, and I
Yeah.
promised not to watch until she got home, and she just got home.
Yeah.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Yeah. So he's having these conversations with his daughter about, and he even has these conversations from season 1 through the final season, where he's very much look, I have to do what I have to do to get justice. Your job is to follow the rules. Don't be me. Because he understands where he's at in it.
Well, this is a good example, because this is one of those where there is message.
There is there's obvious message.
Obvious message. However, there's nuance to the message.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in one of the seasons,
And
they
there's-
even talk about the idea of basically Black Lives Matter.
Well, and there's consequences to the message both ways,
Yes.
pros and cons. That's another thing too on your message fiction. If you can show like the reality, and like a lot of the bad message fiction is like everyone who believes what I believe is good and smart and pure,
Yep.
and everybody who believes opposite of me is big, stupid, bad guy, dumb idiot, whatever.
So most Stephen King fiction.
Yeah. He. In fact, Stephen King is so ham-fisted. He had in Under the Dome, he had like a small town sheriff.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm not even sure. He was an Iraq vet or an Afghan vet, but he was like a Maoist. And I was like, okay. I mean, that does happen in real life, but you get a small town American vet Marxist. I mean, theoretically that happens, but come on, dude.
And frankly, most small town America leans a certain way.
Yeah, well, the last time I dealt with a cop in rural Utah it was over a political issue because I was getting death threats again. I mean, I told you about that. Yeah. And I was talking to the cop about it, and I was like, hey, I don't want to offend you, but I hurt some people's feelings, so why is this happening? And I go, I don't want to offend you. I don't know what your politics are. And he goes, dude, I'm a sheriff's deputy in rural Utah. What do you think my politics are? I was like, okay, valid point. Here we go. Yeah. And I could explain the story, and he got it.
But there, to your point, there are, if you were to write that in fiction, there are very specific ways in which you go about it so that it feels natural. Because if Larry is a character in a book who believes a certain way, then that character has to be true to himself in whatever his personal belief system and messaging is. And then therefore, Larry the character's reactions and interactions with other characters have to feel equally honest and relevant.
Yeah. You think about some of like the more powerful stuff in fiction is when it takes somebody who does believe different than you, yet it still makes them a compelling character.
Yeah.
That's some of like, going back to the Bosch thing, there was that season where, Bosch has skirted the law many, many times, broke the law to get real justice. There was like book justice versus real justice. And then later on, J. Edgar does something really bad. Once again, just but illegal.
You are very legal.
And Harry Bosch judges him harshly for it. And J. Edgar pays a price for it.
He does.
Like emotionally, he's just a broken dude. Some of the best performance I've ever seen though is when he comes back and he like walks away and it's like he's got his walk back. He's got his swagger back.
He's got the swagger.
Because he's on a mission again.
Yeah.
That's good writing, guys. And so what you want to do is like if you want to preach about something, I mean, have something in there to preach against, and this goes back to show, don't tell. I mean, if you say saving the earth is good, making polar bears extinct is bad, you shouldn't drive gas cars. That's pretty simplistic. It's kind of stupid. It's ham-fisted. It comes across as annoying. Half your audience just rolled their eyes. The other half rolled their eyes too. They just have to pretend they didn't.
Right.
So don't do that. I mean, if you're telling that kind of story, have the repercussions in there. Have the debate. I mean, if that's what your story is about, have some, at least make it entertaining.
Well, and again, to go back to one of your earlier points, Larry, it has to feel honest and relevant. Like it can't be everyone who agrees with me is correct and everyone who disagrees with me is stupid and is obviously the bad guy.
It is a shallow caricature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and that's a danger to fall into.
So
I made the Monster Control Bureau people, because you know how anti-government I am. I wrote an entire book where those guys are the good guys.
Well,
right?
Well, yeah, and I mean,
and there are actually some popular
especially,
characters.
book 5, right? So, when you're reading Nemesis, for example, and you know, Jefferson's out there, and you know, all these characters are there, and you're like, you know what? When you're seeing the story from their eyes, they're not doing the wrong thing.
Yeah. But when you're back to the regular series, they're the antagonists.
Well, that's because it's through the eyes of people who despise and distrust them.
Yeah.
It's not unlike Servants of War, where Ilarion is, you know, he feels a certain way about war. Natalia feels a very certain way about war. They are good guys. And then there's Kristoff.
Who's a bad guy?
He is a bad guy.
But there's worse guys. There
are worse guys. And when you and I've had this discussion with a lot of people about the book, and they're like, yeah, dude, like, they're like, you know, they almost always say this. They're like, I know Kristoff is a dirtbag. I just know he's such a terrible, awful dirtbag. He's like, but he's kind of our dirtbag.
Yeah, when I take a character who has beliefs that are diametrically opposed to the audience reading the book, yet I can make the reader understand that dude's perspective and why he's coming at it, that makes it way more effective.
Yeah.
And honestly, like just, you know, getting away from the fiction and getting to the nonfiction side where I've written, you know, some nonfiction stuff, yeah. I understand the other side's points. I think they're wrong, but I get them. But the other side doesn't understand mine.
Right.
And so what happens is when I get into an argument with them, they don't get it. And I run circles around them because they just don't get it. Because if you understand where your opponent's coming from, and you know their argument before they make it and better than they make it, they can't get you because you're ready for everything. And so, guys, honestly, your fiction's the same way. Don't dumb it down to this simple caricature of good and evil. And also, too, another one, too, is I really, really hate, if it's science fiction or fantasy, where they take political issue of the day in 2023 or 2019 or 2020, whenever the book was wrote, and they took that and they shoehorn it into whatever. As if 400 or 500 years in the future, we're going to have the same exact issue over something, or in a fantasy world that is completely different than ours, where people have completely different backgrounds and completely different struggles. Guys, outside of America, most of the world doesn't understand our modern woke struggles because, honestly, frankly, to people who have to work for a living, we're so comfortable that stuff's just nonsense to them.
Yep.
I mean, Steve, you lived in a country with like real racism, right?
I mean, I was subject to it.
And you were because you were the one white dude.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's an entirely different thing.
Daily.
Yeah. And if people haven't seen that, they don't get it. And so, like, we cram this stuff down everybody else's throats. But honestly, a lot of this stuff is like, if I'm reading a science fiction book set hundreds of years in the future, yet the concerns, the political ranting, the message is 2023 suburban white liberal concern of the day number one, that just feels inauthentic.
Well, and just to be politically equal or neutral, so to speak, if it reads like white or whatever insert race, conservative topic of the day, it's equally obnoxious.
Oh yeah, my side is just as guilty. Like, and
it's equally obnoxious.
We can be profoundly ham-fisted. And I have people who are on my side politically. I mean, authors who vote the same way I vote, believe the same way I believe, and they're just as annoying. Because if you get too ham-fisted and you get too bossy and too pushy, where you make the other side a bunch of dumb caricatures, I mean, yeah, some percentage of the audience is going to find that rewarding, but most people are going to get bored. And even like I said earlier, even if you agree with somebody, you're going to roll your eyes. And even I said, if half of us pretend we don't, we're still rolling our eyes. Just, you can get the same theme and the same message in there, guys. Just make it good.
Yep. I think that's where I want to end this episode, Larry. The idea, all coming back to it, the Jim Butcher thing, and that's you have to entertain harder than you preach. So as long as it's good, as long as it's entertaining, you're probably going to be okay, and you can put whatever messages that you need to, that you feel like in there. But again, entertainment first, guys. So that's all the time we have for you today. Again, we appreciate you, and thanks for listening to us on our new equipment. to see if this works okay.
Yeah, let us know in the comments how that sounded to you guys, and we'll adjust fire from there.
Yeah.
We'll be back in the studio for most of our regular recording. We're going to do a couple episodes today while we recover from the all-you-can-eat Brazilian barbecue.
Yes.
We'll see how long we make it.
Still very full. All right. Take it easy, fellas.
Writer Dojo is Steve Diamond and Larry Correia. Produced by Jack Wilder and Bear and Hare Studios. Theme song, Word Mercenaries by Craig Nivo. New episodes come out every Wednesday wherever you stream your content. If you enjoyed this podcast, you can help support us by going to anchor.fm/WriterDojo, by leaving a 5-star rating and review, and by helping to spread the word. To advertise on the Writer Dojo, email ads@writerdojo.com. All questions and comments can be emailed to questions@writerdojo.com.
You're not going to have a lot of squishy bleeding hearts in that line of work. You know what I mean?
No.